Okay, while we're waiting for others to join us, I think we can start now. I just hope those that are joining from outside are conversant with the timing. A very good morning to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever one is applicable at the clime where you're joining us from. My name is Caroline Igege. I'm the principal partner of Beulah Barrister and Solicitor, the law firm that puts together this webinar. I want to particularly, welcome every one of us into the new year, today being the second day in the year 2021. And in the same vein, I would like to thank every one of us that joined in the last webinar where we discussed about writing wills, how to go about writing our wills. As expected, a lot of persons are still calling in, asking questions, clarification as to what to do and how to go about documenting their wills, and we appreciate that fact. A couple of days ago, as a firm, we just thought it wise to put up an Instagram appearance, being that Instagram seems to be the new normal. So we just opened an Instagram page. So if you have the flyer with you, kindly check the left corner of the flyer where we wrote reach out and follow at BB Solicitor. It's on the, I'll put it in the chat room as well. So as depicted in that flyer, today we'll be discussing about some of the major pitfalls, because this discussion cannot be exhausted. So we're just discussing some of the major pitfalls that we should guide against as an intending investor in real estate. By real estate, I'm talking about land, whether built up, whether bare, or the other, whichever one. In as much as the property is built on land, we call them real properties as against choices and actions. That's the intangibles like your shares, your stocks. That's not what we're discussing today. We're discussing about real properties. Now, why did we put this together as a law firm? Maybe because of some of the issues that come to us as a firm, some of the things that we've had to deal with in recent times. And again, this particular platform is where we'll be discussing timely issues as they arise. So on that note, let's quickly delve into the issue, what we're discussing today, which are the pitfalls that we should guide against. It's a very intricate issue, it's delicate. You'll be wondering, why am I saying it's a delicate thing? It's delicate in the sense that once you are an investor, or okay, let's just say as an intending investor in real property, you know, is a major keystone. It's a major keystone in building your finance. It gives you some level of affluence. It gives you some level of influence. You know, the landlord, tenant status. And again, you would all agree with me that is a major milestone in becoming financially secured. If you reside in this part of the world where I'm talking from, I'm actually presenting from Lagos State, Nigeria, you will know that real estate is, once you are an owner of a property, in short, you have some level of comfort. Let me just put it that way to cut it very short. So, like I said, it's delicate, and that is why we as a law firm thought to put this webinar together, so that while making the decision of investing in real property, you are properly guided. Now, having made the decision to get a property, be it a bare land or a built-up property, like we have in recent times, where you have all these land speculators. Some of these land speculators, I mean, these real estate companies that are buying to sell at a profit. Some of them build the properties and then they begin to sell flats, detached, and all of that, like we have in this part of the world. Whichever part of the world you are joining from, we have land speculators all over the world. So what are the things you should guide against when investing in real property? Whether you're buying from land speculators, you're buying from individual, whoever you're buying from, there are things you must guide against. One, if you've successfully made the decision of buying, you've chosen the location and all of that, it now comes to what we call due diligence. By due diligence, I'm not referring to search alone, because most people come to us and say, lawyer, I've done a search already. If you are in this part of the world, Alausa is a very popular word. I've done search already, or I've asked somebody to help me do search at Alausa. And what I just need you to do now is just to come in as a lawyer and help us to conclude the transaction. Please, I want to use this opportunity to tell you that when making an investment of this magnitude, kindly engage the services of an experienced lawyer. Why am I saying this? Due diligence does not start and end with search. That you conducted search does not mean that the property is a good buy. You conducted search, you saw the name of the owner, you saw some other particulars, and now you've gotten some level of comfort that you should buy into it. But having been in practice for roughly 10 years now, I can tell you for free that search is not all there is to due diligence. I recently acted in one transaction for an elderly woman. She was buying into a property in Magodo Phase 1. If you stay here, you know that that's a very highbrow area. The property was over 100 million. And then she said she has done search before, but we were not comfortable. Reason being that I do not like running helter-skelter for something that would have been avoided. So I said, okay, do you have the certified true copy of the search that you conducted before? She said no, but that someone checked it before, that the property is very good, that she wants to buy. She was so, pushy. She just wanted me to pay for the property and go for the meeting. I went for the meeting, a lot of things were just out of place. I kept on telling her that these are red flags, but I feel in her opinion, the property was cheap. It was very massive, over 100, but the features and everything, the finishing, everything was perfect. She really wanted the property. I told her, Mama, I wouldn't want a situation whereby we'll buy into trouble. Please, let's take this thing step by step. But luckily for us as a firm, she was she allowed us to carry out further due diligence. And I'm sorry to announce to you that transaction did not go through. Apart from checking documents at Alausa, there is the need to engage the vendor. There is the need to engage other parties. In these parts where we reside, many of them are into JVs. There are joint ventures. You need to check the mother documents. It's not all the covenants in the mother documents that you will be able to, carry out. You may not even be okay with some of the covenants in the mother document, and you had already bought into it. Remember that the mother documents will still guide you, whether or not you are against it, because that is the foundation for the property that you bought. So we engaged the vendor, we engaged other principal persons around the transaction, and then it was just red flag, red flag, red flag. And luckily for us, the mama said, okay, I think she would rather not buy into it, because as a lawyer, you can't do much. Yours is just to advise the client. But an experienced lawyer has a reputation to protect. Beyond you just going for the fee and all of that, when push comes to shove, your name will be called, you'll be dragged into the mud. So that is one. Due diligence, please, when you're doing due diligence, stop talking about I've done search, I've asked somebody to do it at Alausa, it's very good, and just buy it for me, just conclude it, just do documents for me. Search is not all there is to due diligence. Now, having crossed the hurdle of due diligence, what next? Documentation. Documentation is very key. In short, documentation is almost everything. Documentation is almost everything. Now, most of us, or some of us, let me say, are in the habit of doing our documents from business center. And then you'll be wondering, how can someone with that volume of investment now go to a business center? So a person who knows next to nothing about property law, and then you do your documents from there. Please, it's not, what I'm about to say is not ridiculous, it's true. These are experiences I've gained from practice. Someone approached me and said they just wanted lawyer seal. They just want me to seal the documents, that they've already done the document. Your guess is as good as mine. I refused because I'm not the one that drafted the document. And how am I sure that the right clauses are what you have put into it? Mind you, it is not all transactions that the clauses will be the same. Because some people are in the habit of saying, they have this thing in the computer already. It's just to copy and paste. Well, for some persons, it may be true. But in our practice, I particularly don't encourage that because every transaction is peculiar, whether you like it or not. There are things that are peculiar to each and every transaction. You cannot have a one-size-fits document for everything because when you go into transactions, real property transaction, you get to discover that it is different circumstances that are surrounding the transaction. So you cannot have a copy and paste document. There are what we call legal jargons that would be there. But mind you, if you are not engaging the services of an experienced lawyer, you won't even know the most important parts of a legal document. Every part of a legal document has name. There are different names for every part. And an experienced lawyer knows where to do the most work. For instance, now, if you go to, okay, let me just use, well, we have more of a male participants, but I will still use, okay, something that just readily comes to mind. When you go to all these artists now, there's a particular part of the canvas that they will concentrate more effort on, unlike the rest. That is how a legal document works too. You get to concentrate more on a particular part. Why? Because you've gathered this experience either from your training as a lawyer or from your practice. And when I'm talking about engaging the services of an experienced lawyer, I'm not talking about the number of years. It depends on where you have mastered, where you have, developed your tentacles, so to speak. Now, documentation, like I said, is very key. In this era of people buying land to sell at a profit at a later date, a lot is happening. If you have been fortunate to buy a real property, whether from all these land speculators, that's people that are buying to sell for profit, or you bought from an individual, or whoever you bought from, these real estate people, real estate company, their own practice is that they will be the ones to do documentation for you. But I just want to ask this question. It's a rhetorical question, but I know you will answer at your own end. As an intending buyer, as a prospective investor in real estate property, who do you think should do your documentation for you? Is it the lawyer to the seller or the lawyer to the buyer? If you answered the lawyer to the buyer, you answered correctly. But unfortunately, because these people are out to maximize profits, most at times, what obtains is that they tell you that they will do the documentation, they will do everything for you. I am not adverse to it. You know, they are a company, they have rules, they have their own mode of operation, but a wise investor will still engage the services of a lawyer. You would ask me why. You have to vet the documents. And you, as someone who probably did not study law, might not really know where to measure your focus on when you are vetting a document. As minute as punctuation marks are, it can import a whole lot of meaning. Where the comma is, where the full stops are, it matters a lot, but you might not know. You might just say, it's a company. Most people take solace in the fact that they are buying from company. My own take is this: you should even be more careful when you are buying from a company because they are legal entities. They can decide to liquidate. They can wind up. There's nothing you can do about it, particularly when they are limited by shares. It is the assets that are on ground that they will use to settle their creditors. So you don't just say, I'm buying from a company. Because when I go out to do transactions for persons who have bought from these land speculators, I see that people come in by themselves to do their transaction. And I'm wondering that if you have this volume of money to invest in a real property, which is a keystone, a milestone in financial security, why should you not go out to protect this investment? I've had to deal with a lot of real estate companies. And then when they engage our firm, most times we write to them trying to, these terms are negotiable. Some of us don't even know that these terms are negotiable. The terms and conditions in a contract, they are negotiable. That is why it's called a contract. It's an agreement. So, but some of us, we just feel that it's a company. Anything they give to us, we just carry. Some of us don't even read as laymen. We just keep the document until the day that problem will come out of it, or you want to take something, you want to get mortgage or something, and then you see that you don't have any documents. What they gave to you was just empty, was very verbose, always wordy, plenty words. Because some of them don't even know anything about real property. They don't know anything about property law. So in all fairness to them, I don't mean to cast aspersion on anybody. Some of these persons are just out to maximize profits. So it is you who is the prospective buyer, you, the intending investor, that should protect your investment, because it is the agreement that the law courts will enforce. It is not your understanding. When push comes to shove, you cannot tell the judge that my understanding was this. The judge will ask you, what is in the documents? Did you execute the document or did you not execute the document? So that is why we should be very, very careful when we are actually making this kind of investments. Some of us have started some transactions, maybe from the previous year, we're carrying it over into this new year. And then as we are hearing this now, we're getting to know some of the things that we can checkmate, because real property transactions are not things you just enter blindly, so to speak. Having done your documentation, if you succeed in doing a proper documentation, what next? You have to perfect. In perfection, or by perfection, I mean you have to register your interest in that property with the appropriate authorities, with the appropriate agencies. And while you are going about this, I have noticed something in my roughly 10 years of experience. Some persons prefer to engage touts. I'm sorry to say, but that is it. That is it. A lot of us prefer to engage touts. Why? Most of us feel that it is cheaper to engage them, because more often than not, they'll just tell you that, Oga, just bring so and so money, or Madam, bring so and so money, we'll lodge it for you. When it is ready, we will call you to get your documents. For some, it works. I will not lie to you. It works for some. But like I said earlier, as a real estate investor, if you are able to make the decision to invest in this kind of milestone, I think you should go all out to protect your investments. Everything we're discussing today, there are things we've seen in practice. Even worse, different shades, different manner, but we cannot exhaust our discussion here today. Now, I'm talking about perfection. You engage a non-expert to do your perfection for you. They say the services of an experienced lawyer is too expensive, and then you may be willing to cut costs, you may be willing to cut corner. But most of the times, it does not end well. I have a client, he works with Honeywell. He approached us sometime in either late 2018, I cannot remember very well, either late 2018 or early 2019. He wanted a building plan approval. You know, perfection is not just you going to register your deed of assignment or your C of O, or whichever one is applicable to the transaction you entered into. There are what we call building plan approval if you intend to build. There are some other bodies, there are some other agencies that you need to see. when going about this property investments and all of that. So when he approached us, he said he wanted us to get a building approval for him, that he has a very sad story. So we were very eager to hear. We're like, okay, what's the sad story, sir? He said he had paid before. He had made payments for this building plan approval before. Just when he thought he was getting his approval, he was made to know that the receipts he had, the receipts that were issued to him, were fake. If you reside in Lagos, there is this automated receipt that the government gives for almost all Lagos State transactions, whether land use charge, whether taxes, most of the transactions. Sorry, permit me to pick up the receipt. Let me just show you. This is how it looks. If you can see it, you may not be able to see it well, but if you've done transaction with Lagos State, it is most likely that you will have this receipt with you. So he had those receipts. Truly, it was a sad story. He had paid roughly 2.5 because approvals are very expensive, and his property is located in Mende, Maryland. It's another highbrow area, though on the mainland. Now, he had paid monies. He paid it to a young man. The only thing we are still baffled about till date is that he was not willing to press charge. He was not willing to go after the young man. Whether the young man is a family member or a relative or who, I don't know. But at the end of the day, he paid twice. He paid twice. I don't know what the issue was. Some of us, even when we know that the statutory fee is, let's say, 50,000, somebody will tell you that they want to do it for you for 20. You just quickly go in. So when the thing backfired, you don't want to discuss it outside because you know that what you were about doing is wrong. So I feel that if you are blessed enough to invest in real properties, I think we should do the proper thing so as to safeguard the larger part of our investments. We cannot just say because okay, what we want to do is to buy land. I don't want to engage the services of an experienced lawyer. You know, lawyers, they charge a lot. Lawyer will tell me this, lawyer will tell me that. Some people said it's not even charge. They feel that the lawyer wastes time, that the lawyer speaks too much English, that the lawyer will be writing letter. They don't want letter. I just want to get this thing over and done with. And then you are wondering, real property transactions are not transactions you finish in 24 hours, except you're not doing a thorough work. When do you conclude? When do you do your due diligence? When do you do your proper documentation? I'm not talking about drafting the agreements now. There are preliminary correspondence that should go from the vendor to the purchaser before we can even begin to tidy up agreement, because these are the bedrock. This is what will form your evidence. Should anything emanate from that transaction, should any ugly event emanate from that transaction. But most of us are not interested in documentation. Some of us will tell you that I'm in possession. You are in possession does not mean that you are the owner. Haven't you seen some properties that somebody has been in possession for like 25 years and then you see that the court has taken possession, they've marked it. You don't wonder what has happened to those properties. We have a matter that we've been handling in the firm. That matter probably started before I was born, because the matter is over 30 years now. We got judgment at the Court of Appeal, only for me to hear now that they've appealed. Mind you, the original people that were involved in this land issue, they've all gone to heaven. In short, they are not in this part of the world anymore. So you'll now be wondering, as an investor, would you rather buy a liability? Even when you are gone, the children or the people you leave behind will not be struggling to perfect the documents that you left behind. You know, when we discussed the importance of writing a will, some persons approached us. Majorly, or the one that stands out amongst them is the owner of a major transport company. I try as much as possible not to mention names, but you know, he has so many properties. I mean, properties in highbrow areas. But guess what? These properties are not perfected, but they are in possession. And I said, well, You know, in drafting a will, you cannot put in properties that are not perfected, properties that have not been registered with the appropriate agencies or bodies. So sometimes writing a will, as easy as it may sound, it may even take you a year or more, depending on how tidy your assets are that you are trying to bequeath to someone else. We've been discussing the issue of perfection. Like I said, our client had to pay another money for approval. We've not even gotten the approval now. We are still on it. Because of this COVID issue and all of that, we are still on it. But at least he is hopeful that he will get a genuine document this time around. You cannot just give your money to a law firm and then the money vanishes like that. The lawyer has a reputation to protect. The lawyer has a body to answer to. But most of us don't want to engage the services of professionals. So this webinar somehow is to shift our mindsets, or to kind of change our orientation, the way we view these things, particularly as it pertains to major transactions like this. In this era of land speculators, they are out to make profits, and I will not blame them. It is you as an investor that should guide your property with all diligence. Perfection is not the last red flag. There are other red flags. Now you have perfected. You are now to manage. You've owned the property. The property is registered in your name. You've done almost everything well. In managing your property, you still need the services of an experienced lawyer. But some persons say, I'll just give it to caretaker, I'll give it to agent. But when push comes to shove, you still get the lawyer to do the letter. You get the lawyer to do the notice. You get the lawyer to engage your tenants or whoever is using your property, or whatever the issue is. You will still get the lawyer. Meanwhile, you have been paying someone else to do caretaker or to do any other thing for you. Now, apart from that, why do you think that banks engage the services of lawyers? What is obtainable now in banks is, once you are taking a loan, they collect money for rectification of title. They assume that your title has defects. They just assume that your document has defects. Why? Because the geographic information system of this state where I'm talking from Lagos State, Nigeria, the geographic information system has been tampered with. So most times you need to do what we call rectification. You need to correct it. You need to make sure that the coordinates of your survey plan are properly located, or they are located in the proper place. Sometimes you buy a property only to find out in the future that the address or the location where you thought your property is placed is not correct. Your survey plan will be defective. You have to do what we call rectification. It is not only survey that necessitates rectification. Rectification could be as to document or as to any other thing. But in practice, what of the most frequent ones that we've handled is survey, wrong survey, poor survey. I'm not an expert when it comes to survey plan, but because we've been dealing with properties and all of that, we've seen them. So to an extent, we can talk about survey plans and all of that. Some of us will go, we engage, sorry, I'm not holding briefs for surveyors, but please, at all material times, engage the services of experienced professionals. When people come to us and they say they want to perfect their title, we ask them for their survey plan. The first thing I ask them is, do you have the record copy? Most of them don't know what a record copy is, because they have underpaid the surveyor. So the surveyor did not lodge your documents. That documents that you are holding as a survey plan may just be empty, may just be useless. How can you say you paid maybe you paid 80, you paid 50, you paid 40 for a survey plan? That survey plan is, in short, is as good as tissue paper. Let me just say that. You can't use it by the time you engage the services of an experienced lawyer to perfect for you. If at all you're unfortunate and then you engage somebody to perfect for you, and the person does not know much about property law transaction, when the person takes the survey plan to the appropriate bodies, they will return it to you. that file will automatically be queried because the red copy of the survey plan will not be there. That is the issue. We're talking about management. Some of us, we go out, we want to take loans from bank. You won't engage the services of an experienced lawyer. This narrative that I'm about to give is, it just happened in November. A client of ours, a very good client of ours, sometimes he just comes into the firm and just gives us one or two things and like, okay, for lunch and all of that. He just came in, he was playing. And then we laughed with him as well, knowing that something was going to drop. You know, lawyers in chamber and everybody were just laughing. You know, as he was going, he said, please, there's this document that I want people to just help me run through. Although it's as good as I've already collected the money. So he brought out the documents, and then we quickly did a legal opinion. We did a legal opinion on the documents. It wasn't up to 30 minutes. By the time we gave him the legal opinion, the man changed his mind. What was the gist of this whole thing? The man had a contract with a company. He was already executing the contract. But towards the end of the contract, he was short of cash. So he needed to quickly get money. And being a good customer of a particular commercial bank, that I will not mention the name now, the man approached the bank, but the bank had earlier given him a letter of guarantee for this particular project. So they placed a lien on his account. It's not as if he did not have money. He has money because we're used to him. So we were even surprised because of the money he was taking from the bank, 5 million. We were surprised, like, what happened? They said they had placed a lien on his account because of that letter of guarantee that the bank gave to him. So now he needed to take a loan from the bank. You should have seen the stringent terms on which the bank was going to give him that money, as little as that, compared to his pedigree. This is money he can easily get from a friend. By the time we were done with the legal opinion, he changed his mind. I suppose he would just collect the money from a friend and finish the contract. But some of us, once it comes to taking a loan, we just feel like, we're already indebted. Why engage the services of an experienced lawyer? Again, I will just collect it. When dealing with financial institution, theirs is a take it or leave it situation. It's either you are taking it or you are leaving it. You cannot negotiate the terms. You cannot negotiate the terms most times. You can't negotiate the terms, except you have so much weight with the financial institution. But as just a banker, you bank with them, most times is a take it or you leave it. But at least the man was able to make an informed decision as to, he was able to make an informed decision as to the next step he would be taking. So conducting engaging the services of a lawyer most times does not mean that that transaction will just sail through. Sometimes these transactions don't sail through. And when they do sail through, you are making an informed decision. So you are not taken by surprise. Nobody will not throw any surprise at you in the future. And then you're like, but I'm not aware of this. At least you get an expert opinion about what you are about to enter into. And if you now choose to go ahead, you are making an informed decision. I'm going to stop somewhere here so that we can take questions. If any of us have questions, we might just put it in the chat room or we'll just raise our hand. But in case you are unable to come up with your questions while the seminar is still going on or the webinar is going on, you can just reach out to us on our social media platform. Like I told you earlier, we have opened an Instagram page. We opened it a couple of days ago so that we can interact more, we can be more in tune with those that are trying to reach out, ask for clarifications and all of that. Then the phone number, I've put it in the chat room earlier on. My private email address is also there. Should you want to reach out, either for clarification or for any other thing. We have dedicated people that are able to answer the questions. It's not only real estate, but today we are majoring on real estate, reason being that there's so many flyers going on about buy some flyers will even say buy 3 get 1 free. And you are not scared. You buy 3 plots and they give you 1 free. There are so many things that we've encountered. I cannot recount everything here. There is one I was pursuing as far as I may not pronounce it well, but it's something like Elerongbe or something. Very far towards Ekbe. Now, this client of mine had bought five. I think he bought five and they gave him one free. At the end of the day, I told him, sir, they don't have title and you cannot give what you don't have. I do not blame them. When something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Where do they buy some and get some free? These people, they probably just approach some group of villagers, and some of us, when we see flyers, we see title, CFO, Gazette, Excision, this, that, Global Survey. You don't know the implication of all these things. It is not everything you should buy into, except you are not concerned about your investments. But if you are concerned about your investment, and if it is taking a large chunk of your financial assets, you would want to do more than I've even discussed here today. You want to do more than I've even discussed here today. I'm having some private messages. I want to believe that you don't want us to discuss it here. Private messages. Um, I would assume that you probably want us to talk after now. But if you have questions, I will just gonna please you can unmute your mic and then you can ask your questions or you drop it in the chat room. We'll just take one or two questions so that um, every one of us can go back to our normal business. Please, we can unmute our mics and ask questions if we have questions concerning what we've discussed so far. We'll just take a few questions so that we can all go back to okay. Okay, I have do we need to do the same amount of due diligence for properties in Ogun State? In every part, wherever you are joined from, due diligence, so far the transaction is a real property transaction. I think there's no amount of due diligence that can be too much. There's no amount of due diligence that can be too much. And Ogun State is even too close to Lagos for comfort. It's just too close for comfort. You know, some of these practices, we import them from one state to another. So we cannot really tell what, we cannot tell whether some of these dubious activities that are going on in Lagos have been imported to Ogun State. That's the more reason we should do due diligence. We should do due diligence, whether Ogun State, Edo State, whichever part of Nigeria, or even outside the country. Property transactions have similarities all over the world. So property transactions are a keystone transaction all over the world. There are milestones all over. If you have a property outside, if you live outside the country and you have a property, whether by way of mortgage or you know it's a milestone. It's a milestone for you. That is why it's mainly celebrated. There's nobody that will acquire property and they'll say it's normal. It's not normal. It's something that you should be proud of. It's something that you should be glad about. So whichever state we're acquiring the property, I think due diligence can never be too much. Do we still need to do this extensive detailed due diligence? These documents come from governments. Well, transacting with state governments does not mean that one Well, it's at least maybe it is safer. It is safer in the sense that if at all the government now decides to use the land for another thing, maybe they now have an overriding purpose for that particular location that they've originally allotted to you, they may either compensate you or they take you to another location. But that is not, it's not the same with private persons or companies. Sometimes these persons, once the trouble is too much for them, they'll just leave the country and you cannot trace them. I'm talking from facts. There is a company that a client of ours transacted with. Up to today, they cannot find the man, but we hear that the man is somewhere in the US. He floated a company, he sold. I'm sure the problem was too much for him. Sometimes he may not even have known what he got himself into. He may have just innocently gotten other people into trouble. And now he has to run. He couldn't solve the problem. But you know, if it's government, the government cannot run away. It's just that some litigations can be avoided. Worst case scenario, you have a class action. Plenty of people come together and say, no, you cannot take the land from us. And then they may be able to get some respite and all of that. But that is not the case with companies and individuals. So dealing with the government, I would say, is safer. But that does not mean that you shouldn't do due diligence. In government documents, at times, you see that they may come up with the issue of you buy from them, you'll be able to regularize. Regularization is not immediate. You may wait for that you may wait to regularize that land for years, and then you are wondering. And your heart is not at peace because you know that your documents are not in order. Regularization, it means that you first of all come and regularize what is out of place before you now go on to do other necessary documents. Government land. Sometimes you get a land and then maybe your due diligence was not watertight, only to find out that there is a government interest in some part of the land. This one is from experience. A client bought 2 plots of land. He gave us the property to perfect for him. I called him, sir, one of the plots has encumbrance. The man was shouting. He said, what am I saying? That these properties are A, B, and C. His friend that bought this has completed this. I said, okay, plot A does not have encumbrance. Plot B falls on the part that is encumbered. This man was shouting. But you know, till date, we succeeded in perfecting the one that did not have problem for him. The one that had the problem, he later went back to the family, a very big royal family in Lagos here. He later went back to them only to discover that a part of their family land was mortgaged and they were selling to unsuspecting buyers. And they had collected money for 2 plots from him. Meanwhile, the second plot fell into the part that they mortgaged. So what do you do? What do you do? So if, for instance, because you know some of those clients, when they approach you, once the thing has gone bad, they will want to tell you the whole story. But I didn't want to ask him, did you conduct due diligence for all of them? He relied on his own friend's due diligence because his friend has perfected. This is something I was just able to piece together because he never mentioned whether he carried out due diligence or not. He kept on hammering on the fact that his friend has perfected. My friend has perfected. My friend has perfected. So he relied on the findings of his friend. But at the end of the day, he was worse for it. Your friend conducted due diligence and told you that the land is good, you should buy. Why not go ahead and do your own? Rather than trying to play smart. At the end of the day, I'm sorry, most times I sympathize with them, but there's nothing you can do. What can a lawyer do? What can a law firm do for clients who would not want to do the needful? only for them to come up with a lot of issues. And the man did not even believe us when we were telling him that your property is encumbered. He kept on saying, lawyer, what are you saying? The property, let me explain to you. There is A, there is B, there is C. So I bought A, I bought B. So my friend that bought C has perfected. Now you say A is good. How can B be bad? He kept on shouting. How can B be bad? But at the end of the day, there's nothing we could have done for him. So he had to go and sort out the issue. I don't know. I hope we are able to unmute our mic. I've allowed everybody to unmute their mic. Please, we're expecting questions. In the absence of any, but I know.
Hello, Caroline.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Alex, I'm with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the brilliant expert opinion.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now, just a quick question for you, and I hope it benefits other people as well. Basically, I want to know if you buy a property into a global C of O, do you necessarily have to get your own C of O? As in, you understand what I mean? The whole property, like maybe 100 plots are out there, and they tell you this is covered by a global C of O. We see that all the time everywhere. Do you have to get your own C of O?
No, you can't have your C of O, sir. You can't have your C of O. Once it's a global C of O, it means that what was given to you is a plot and a block number. Block and plot number. Am I right, sir?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, what you would do, because with the advent of the Land Use Act, every subsequent transaction needs the consent of the governor. You still need to do your governor's consent. But in this scenario, you will not be needing a survey plan. Why? Because there is a global survey. So it is that global survey that you will just rely on. So it's kind of the only thing a global C of O and a global survey does for you is that it takes away the burden of applying for survey, record copy, and all of that. But you still need to obtain the consent of the governor because it's a subsequent transaction. In as much as there was a C of O, every subsequent transaction on that C of O requires a governor's consent.
Okay. So that governor's consent gives you the independence to be able to sell your own without necessarily taking permission from the original owner who owns the global C of O.
Well, to some extent it does, but that again depends on the document that was given to you at the point of purchase. Some of these real estate companies, they have what they call restrictive covenants. They have a document they call restrictive covenants. This document has the things that you can do while you are in that estate. That is why it is even more important that you engage the services of an experienced lawyer when dealing with real estate companies or land speculators, like I love to call them. You know, they are selling for a profit. So
Absolutely.
until we see the documents that was given to you at the point of purchase, we cannot categorically say you can sell without their input. Sometimes you cannot sell without their input. If they allow you to sell without their input, the buyer, the subsequent buyer still needs to come back to them for documentation because that is the only way they can maximize profits.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I don't know if we have another question so that I don't keep every one of us for too long. Please, if you look into the chat room, you'll see our details. If you join us on our Instagram page as depicted on the flyer, you'll see our phone lines. Although the phone line is in the chat room right now, you'll see our phone lines and then you can reach out to us so that we are in touch with you. I don't know if there's another question. Is there any other person that wants to ask a question? Do we have other questions? Sorry, please let me just quickly go through the charts again to see if we have other questions. Please, can you give us an idea of the costs? We sometimes get opportunities. Quick question. I have a quick question. Okay, we've spoken to Mr. Alex. Sometimes we into blocks of flats for rentals or commercial purpose. Does this mean we still need a C or O for the flats or flats, especially that you do not own all the flats in the property? Yes, sir. You do need it. You need you need to do you need to obtain what we call governance consent. Um, I'm responding to a chat. It says, do we still need a C of O if we just maybe get one flat out of many flats? You need to obtain the governor's consent. It is called governor's consent. Once there is a C of O already, you cannot get a second C of O. You can only get the consent of the governor to that transaction. They are called subsequent transactions. And then you need to obtain the consent of the governor. You need to obtain the consent of the governor. And as per idea of the cost of perfecting, we can't give a one size fits all. I can't just say, when we do due diligence for you, this is how much we take. It depends on the brief. You know, when you brief a lawyer, the lawyer knows the extent of his or her involvement. So there is no, there are no pegged costs to due diligence, except you are just saying, I want to obtain a particular document. Can you tell me how much that document will cost? But if you are not talking about professional fee and all of that, we cannot just say it's so amount, because we don't know the extent of your brief. Thank you for your time. Please, could you advise if you offer services to process CFO at Ibadan? If we offer services, well, for now, we major in Lagos and Ogun State, maybe because we can travel easily to Ogun State. But if you already have a property in Ibadan, we can just still guide you. Let's just see your documents and then we can guide you. There are other experienced practitioners in that place. And if you feel you want our inputs in getting an experienced practitioner there, we can still direct you. But for now, we don't really have transactions emanating from Ibadan. It's mainly Lagos and Ogun States. But that is not to say that we cannot go through your documents. Thank you very much, Taramola Oluwanifemi. So if you don't mind, we could just see your documents and then we know how to take it up from there. Somebody said, how long does it take on the average to process a C of O? How long does it take on the average to process a C of O? This is a very dicey question, and I cannot proffer a one-size-fits-all answer to it. But thank God you said on the average. On the average, give or take, I'll tell you 9 months. But sometimes you engage the services of some persons and they tell you, under 3 months, we will do it. And then the temptation is so high, you give it to them. I can tell you for a fact, a year, 6 months, that's 18 months, you'll still be pursuing them. That's because the process of obtaining a C of O, you know the bureaucratic nature of government and other agencies. You need to go, you need to follow it step by step, except you want to cut the whole process, and then now comes to the issue of PRO. It comes to the issue of PRO. PRO is everything. So if you are in Nigeria, you reside in this part where I'm residing, you know what I am saying when I say PRO. Everything is PRO. But if you want it to be done as it is or as it should be, with the bureaucratic experience and all of that, it won't take anything less than 9 months. So we're still anticipating questions, but in the absence of any, I want to believe that we all had a nice time, or we were able to gain 1 or 2 things from the webinar. And if at all we are unable to come up with our questions now, we'll still be at the other side waiting to receive your questions and to do justice to them. Let me just type in my phone line again in case. So we'll type in our phone line again in case you would rather call.
Hello, Barrister. Thank you very much for thank you very much for the session. I think someone asked a question in the chat box, perhaps you missed it. He's asking how much does it cost on average for a C of O in Ogun State?
It's asking how much for a C of O in Ogun State.
Yeah, in Ogun State. Yeah.
Okay. I would rather, okay, like I keep saying, you cannot have a pegged amount for C of O. It depends on what is obtainable at the moment there. But usually, you have some statutory fees that you pay. And these statutory fees are non-negotiable. Reason being that when it gets to that stage in perfection, they will raise an assessment for you. So the size of your land, the location of your land, and other circumstances surrounding your purchase is what will determine how that place is assessed. So a land that is at Okelewo, the parameters for computing how much you will pay for a C of O will be different from a land that is at maybe Ibarra or Ota. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So there's no one size fits all. I cannot tell you that the cost of obtaining a C of O is roughly 200, because I would be wrong. We have to know the location of your property, and we have to allow the officers who are responsible for assessing them, because they assess it based on square meters. Sometimes they assess it based on government policy. So we wouldn't know the policy that is covering the particular estate or property that you bought into. So it's something that you would have to start, and then you get an assessment. But the thing is this: if you want to have an idea of how much obtaining a C of O will cost, the first thing we will do for you is to put in an application. So when we put in an application, an assessment will be done. We are then able to advise you based on the assessment what you should be looking out for. And that does not mean that you will now be under duress to complete the process. I hope that answers the question. But you have to put in an application first, so that you are assessed based on their own policies and based on what obtains around that particular property that you have bought into. Hello, sir. I don't know if that answers the question. Like I said, so that we don't remain here longer than necessary, please kindly look to the top left of the flyer with you and follow us at BB Solicitors, or you can reach us on our phone lines. It's in the chat room, or you send a personal email so that we can be of help in whatever way you would have us in the transaction. So thank you very much for making out time to join us. We are indeed very grateful, and we look forward to seeing you in our subsequent webinars. Once more, if you're buying a property for the first time, what title documents should you obtain from a seller? Like I said earlier, we need to know the kind of property you are buying. We need to know the kind of property you are buying. There is no list of documents that covers all transaction. So it is the peculiarity of the transaction that determines the documents that you will require from the seller. I mean, say land. You're buying land. Okay, you're buying a bare land. You're buying a bare land. It depends. Are you buying into, if you are buying into an estate, thanks for taking the time to have us today. We deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Linus. Thank you for always being there. Mr. Tunde, I'm trying to answer your question. If you're buying a land, you're asking what documents should you request from the seller. If you're buying a land, you cannot, where is the land located? Where is the land located? Sometimes as lawyers, it is not all the documents we were trained to obtain in law school that we get. You understand? So it's not all the documents that we are trained to obtain in law school that we get. Sometimes the persons you are buying from may not have all the documents that you should ordinarily have, but the documents that he or she have may suffice for you to perfect your title. So, Mr. Tunde, please, I would like to know, if you don't mind, I would like to know the location of the land and the person that you are buying from, or if it's a client that is buying, if you're not the one, we would like to know the location, and we would like to know the circumstances surrounding the transaction so that we are in a better position to advise the kind of documents that should be requested. Thank you so much, and then do have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the remaining part of your day. So we'll be signing off now.